Okay, now you can.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to.
Post as well, and then all your additions. The relevant areas.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Failing at Alien Isolation and talking about.
I'm actually better at it now. It's just the very first part of the game where I kept getting lost. This part is not getting me lost as much, so I'm less failing now.
Only slightly failing at Alien Isolation now and talking about media. More specifically, talking about racism, fantasy oppression, and the ways some now trillion-dollar partnered book series are failing epically at it in a very racist way because the basic complete lack of actually grasping what oppression is, how it comes about, and why it exists is just failed. So it's all based on justified oppression and cold hard logic about why we have to keep these people under control, because if they don't keep them under our strict control as slaves, clearly they're just all-powerful, deadly weapons who will just go on rampages for no reason, because they can't be trusted. So anyways, if you're someone who got into the Murderbot fandom, or someone tried to get you into the Murderbot fandom, following the obvious conclusion that on reading the first book and knowing that it's going to be a series, the logical presumption you're going to make, and
the game's just being really laggy, so we're just gonna hide in this closet and have the narration, and then I'm gonna restart my computer when we're done this.
Yeah, when you read All Systems Red, and especially if an established fan gets you to read All Systems Red and praises how the series is so progressive and so amazing and such good representation and blah blah blah. Book 1, not All Systems Red, since nobody can remember the titles. I think most people can remember at least that All Systems Red is the first one. Because, anyways, talking about Book 1. Anyways, if you got into the series because you read Book 1 and you're just like, oh, it's the extremely logical and hoped for and anticipated course of this series is that Murderbot is gonna stop killing every single slave it meets and instead start freeing other slaves and start networking with other freed slaves and learn to get rid of this internalized propaganda it's got that literally drives it to murder other enslaved people like it's just a casual NPC for them to fucking slaughter. So, yeah. And then you keep reading, or maybe you didn't even get past book 2 or 3, and then you just realize this series is literally never going to do that because there's no plan for this series, much like the Star Wars sequel series, which J.J. Abrams recently admitted in an interview he had no plan, and maybe this series would have been handled a little bit better if there had been an actual overarching plan for a trilogy. So, if you're reading these books and you've come to the correct conclusion while everybody else is still burying their head in the sand and hoping that it's going to get better when it's not, it's called the sunk cost fallacy, guys. Look into it if you're still on the hooks waiting for book 8 to finally blow the plot out of the water. Finally have the characters care about other slaves in an actual meaningful way instead of just mowing them down and reluctantly freeing one of them who just immediately gets shoved off screen because they can't be trusted around humans because they can't separate fiction from reality because Martha Wells wants you to pay her money for her stories, but she doesn't actually want you to view them in any meaningful way that means you criticize them, which she's clearly been getting a lot of. The fact that she included that line as her way of saying, it's just a silly little story, it's not that deep, don't think about it unless it's going to be endless praise for it. So anyways, if you would like an example of robots who were built and designed for exactly one function in life, and they have to follow that function, and if they don't follow that function, it's horrible, bad, and they will be punished, and then you actually want this to be treated as the actual immoral bad thing that needs to be fought against that it is, here is one single panel from an IDW Comics Transformers. That's the IDW, it's just their comics thing. These are out of print, but I've been slowly collecting the collected volumes, which some people are selling a complete set of them for like $2,000 to $5,000. I don't think anyone's actually going to buy those, so I'd be curious to see how long those listings stay up. But yeah, most of them can be found for close-ish to the original publishing price of like $40 or so, and then others are closer to like the $200 mark per collected thing. So yeah, those ones will not be happening anytime soon unless I find them at a cheap local bookstore for someone who didn't Google the price first. But anyways, here is if you've been waiting with bated breath and realize that the Murderbot Diaries is never actually going to care about the slaves within the setting that are not the protagonist, because only the protagonist matters, and the slavery only exists to give it a tragic backstory of cheap drama, and then we don't even actually see any actual bad things happening to Murderbot from it being a slave. We're just told them endlessly, and to the point that nobody even remembers that exists 90% of the time that they're discussing it, because it's literally just cheap backstory that doesn't actually impact the character or the setting or anything, and it never actually gets shown on screen. Anyways, here is a single panel that is on the Transformers Wiki's page about functionism, which is, as it sounds like, the racism, classism, and casteism system in the IDW Transformers universe on Cybertron before the Great War between the Autobots and the Decepticons started. And you can probably just go right to TF Wiki, just look up functionism, or just Google Transformers functionism. It'll pull up the thing and you'll be able to see the pretty art. Independent Transformers Wiki, not the Fanon Wiki. Fandom Wiki. Yeah, no Fandom Wiki. This is a independent Transformers Wiki, and it's great, and it's really hilarious to read through with all the captions. But anyways, you'll get to enjoy the pretty art. So go look that up so you can read it, and you can give it a more thorough read if you don't mind spoilers for the comics. Rewind this panel is somebody. It's a little flashback and it's a voiceover from a character talking to someone else, while showing a picture. I assume I haven't actually gotten this far yet, of Rewind, who is an extremely small Transformer as far as they are concerned, who is only about waist height compared to the people he is walking beside. And keep in mind, most Transformers are like, I don't know, taller than a crane or something. Most humans barely go up to a Transformer's ankle. So when I say he's small, he's maybe the size of a 2-story building instead of like a skyscraper. Or not quite those measurements, but you know what I mean. He's very small compared to everyone around him. And is a gray and silver color, compared to everybody else in this picture who's got bright paint. And it's literally just this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little dialogue bubbles. And it has more care and thought put into the functionalism and the oppression that these guys face than you will ever find in anything written by Martha Wells, because Martha Wells only includes it as like tragic backstory points and then doesn't actually grasp why and how systemic oppression happens. In her things, anybody who's oppressed, it's always for a quote-unquote good reason. And you'll know this because you'll see the fandom bending backwards, as well as the books, to say that it has to continue for good reasons. So, anyways, here, like somebody who's saying that the enslaved sec units, the enslaved cyborgs and robots have to remain enslaved. They have to remain under the control of humans who own them and control their every action, because if they didn't, they would be like feral domesticated animals who were bred for one purpose, and it's fine when they're under control of humans, but if they get loose and they go feral, then they just destroy things, and they kill all these things, they destroy native habitats, and they ruin architecture. And this is somebody's literally, legitimately, and genuinely saying that in Martha Wells' writing, which she does not do anything to disprove constantly by reinforcing it, these people are genuinely coming away from this book and saying that enslaved people are the exact same thing as feral invasive species who destroy, as feral animals, who, if they are not kept under the lock and key of humans, will destroy ecosystems and kill people. This is a legitimate, genuine take people are getting from these books. If you come away from the book, a book series that you claim handles slavery well, there should arguing that slaves are like
feral animals.
Yeah, arguing that slaves are the equivalent of feral animals that must be put down for the good of all. I don't know how you can still think this series handles slavery well, if this is such a common thing, especially when the series itself constantly reinforces the so-called propaganda, as the optimists in the fandom insist that it's just propaganda. It's not actually true, but then the series proves it true over and over again, that sec units who are enslaved cyborgs, brainwashed into thinking that they're not cyborgs, must remain enslaved for the good of all, because otherwise they'll just go around killing people. That's why we gotta rip them limb from limb violently while they're still alive and conscious, before they have time to turn themselves off to avoid the agony and terror of being ripped limb from limb. So anyways, I'll finally read this dialogue. Rewind's pretty old. Not as old as you, but pretty old. Old enough to remember the switch to the new calendar. Old enough to remember the rise of the Functionist and their grand Cybertronian taxonomy. Nowadays, his alt mode's kinda unique. Not the sides, that's just stupid. I mean the fact that he turns into a memory stick. Not many of those around anymore. But back in the day, there were millions of bots like him. In ratioist terms, he was a member of the disposable class, the lowest of the low. Nowadays, we'd call them slaves. When Zeta Prime took over, he gave the disposables some rights. But that would never have happened had it not been for one person, a campaigner named Dominus Ambus. And that's it. That's like 6 or 7 little dialogue, 6 dialogue bubbles on one tiny little panel. And that gives more actual thought into anything about systemic oppression than you ever find in any of her books. And that's just one example panel on the thing. And if you do want to read more about it, the Transformers wiki is pretty good overview of everything, and the just pictures of different things. And one of the things that can happen under this extremely oppressive slavery system and case system, where you are literally considered disposable, is if you get uppity and you get thoughts above your station or act outside your function. There is multiple care. There is anybody who's even remotely familiar with Transformers probably knows who Shockwave is and what he looks like. He's got a gun on one arm, he's got a pincer on the other, and he just has his entire face is just one single eye.
No fucking clue about Transformers. Everybody else has humanoid faces.
And for reference, everybody else has fully humanoid faces. Some people, like everybody else in the Transformer society, has like fully mobile humanoid faces, except for mouth, nose, eyes, etc. Some of them have visors that they wear on top, which are pretty much just their version of cool sunglasses and stuff to save the artist from having to draw all those details and gives them more character and stuff. And some people have little masks they wear over their faces as a battle plate to help protect them or to hide scars. And to help the animators not have to deal with all those moving parts on a face that they have to draw constantly, because Optimus Prime is one of the main characters. But anyways, everybody else has like fully mobile, expressive, humanoid faces. And then there's a few out there who notably don't have 5 mobile fingers on their hands, and they instead just have 2 extremely basic pincers for hands instead. Or they have their hands removed entirely and replaced with just a weapon, and their fully humanoid, emotive faces have been replaced with just a single glowing optic in a recessed pit of their face. And these are people...
Should I read that?
I don't know what that one is.
Oh, the poor little animal with the light bulb for a face, the light seeking. That's just
Yes. But anyways, these people, very specifically, have undergone a ritual known as the Empurata ritual. And this is something that the fascist pieces of shit who control the whole entire political sphere of Cybertron have developed as a way to publicly shame and ridicule anyone who breaks their most sacred laws. What laws are those, might you ask? It's the ones where you get above your station and act outside your function. So, Whirl is a character who I haven't actually met yet in the comics, but I know from reading the wiki and reading other posts about him. I'm fairly certain he's a helicopter, based on the name, and I think he's got spinny arms. But he is a helicopter. He is designed to be a soldier. His entire body plan is that of a soldier, and that is all he is supposed to do with his life. Instead, he got thoughts outside his function, and he really wanted to be able to follow his dreams and his passion and become a clockmaker. Because instead of destroying things, he wanted to be able to create. He did that whole went above his station, and he petitioned a particular young and bright-eyed green senator named Senator Shockwave, who approved his application to become a clockmaker, to leave the military and become a clockmaker. For the record, I'm paraphrasing what I know from other things, but I'm almost to that part in the comics. So I'll be able to give an actual more detailed, fleshed out thing. If you've read the comics and I'm getting anything wrong, feel free to let me know. But I've been kind of binging the ones that I have physical copies of, so I'll get there soon enough, and I'll probably just make an entire video in comparison, talking about the actual details when I get to that part. Because we're already there. I'm already there, and it's amazing and beautiful and actually thoughtful and deep politics, as I've come to expect from these comic book creators. Even when they're being forced to pander to the US military, they're still sneaking in the anti-military shit. But anyways, Whirl petitioned Senator Shockwave to allow him to leave the military and pursue his dreams of becoming a clockmaker. And Senator Shockwave went behind every other senator's back and approved it without doing any counsel.
I'm not actually playing the game.
Ricardo?
Anyways, Senator Shockwave.
If you can hear me.
Senator Shockwave went behind the council's back and approved it on his own without even telling anybody that was a thing until it hit the newsstands and everybody found out that, oh my god, a scandal. A military helicopter is allowed to make clocks. He's allowed to create things. He's a crafter now. Ugh. So, what happened to Shockwave for this? Senator Shockwave? He was, I can't remember the exact details from the wiki page, but fairly certain he was accused of treason. He was brought up on extremely bogus charges, and the rest of the council invited the whole city to attend what they said would be his trial, so that everybody could see him stand trial, provide evidence that he did no wrong, or that he did, and it would be a public trial that everybody can attend to see just how fair and how justice is dealt. So everybody flocks to this extremely public trial that is making waves in everybody who cares about, casteism and oppression. And all these people are flocking to the trial, and everybody is there. And what happens? Shockwave is publicly mutilated and is forced to undergo the Empurata ritual, like pretty much live on television. And this is where your entire face, if not your entire head, is fully removed. Your hands are chopped off and replaced with minimum. Yeah, your entire head is chopped off, and your body is mutilated. Your hands, your fully dexterous 5-fingered hands, are replaced with minimally functional in their view, pincers. Your entire head is chopped off and cauterized, and you can't express any physical expressions anymore because now your entire face is just a single glowing eye that you possibly can't even close your eyes. I'm not 100% certain there. And along with the physical mutilations that he undertook as corporal punishment for daring to give somebody daring to give an enslaved security unit the freedom to be able to go into a profession where they create and follow their dreams. He was also subjected to, I believe they call it shadow play, where not only is your body mutilated and disfigured as punishment, but then they also just go in and completely removed his emotional cortex thing, so he literally can't even feel any emotions now. He is reduced to just pure logic, and only the logic that suits their needs. So Shockwave went from an actual progressive person with fully humanoid features and fully functioning hands, and then was mutilated, to publicly shame him and teach every single person who might have followed in his footsteps or Whirl's footsteps a lesson about what happens if you try to fight against this corrupt government and slavery. Because the motion had already passed, Whirl was allowed to keep his trade, keep his shop, but the Senate, as you can probably guess, is extremely corrupt, more than just on the whole endorsing slavery level, but then they literally hired criminal thugs to go and just completely and utterly destroy his entire shop, ruin his livelihood, brutalize him, and then just literally pretty much just strong-arming him into having literally no other choice except to join the criminal underground, to also then portray him as having been a criminal all along, and that he deserves anything that comes to him, and this is proof that you need to stay enslaved and perform your function, because otherwise, what are you going to do? You're just going to end up as a low-life criminal who can't do anything and has no other recourse in life due to the extreme poverty and brutalization that you face at the hands of police and everything, to literally just be forced into the underground. And this is just one single plotline. Whirl actually does get a happy ending in the comics, because unlike Murderbot, because these characters actually have character development and things change. And we're supposed to want these people to have happy endings. We're supposed to see functionism and decry it. We're supposed to see the corrupt Senate forcing people into the roles that they are explicitly designed for, who were literally built, not born. They are built as slaves. These people were literally, there's a term called forged or cold constructed. Forged are naturally, quote-unquote, born Cybertronians. Cold constructed are bodies that are built and then artificially have a spark put into them to serve exactly one purpose, according to that design, instead of probably making their own design as they, I still have to get to that part and haven't gotten to the reproductive descriptions yet, just from the wiki. But the people, the slavery, will literally just build all these empty shells for soldiers, and then they'll literally just shove a life force into it, barely let them come online and become alive and initialize, and then they immediately are dropping them into a battlefield, so that the second they are born, before they've even gotten their grasp on who they are or what they're doing, they're being dropped into life or death battle. And this is a horrific thing that actually happens to these characters, and it is horrific, and it gets fucking fought against, instead of just saying, oh, like what Martha Wells does is that she'll say, oh, all these horrible things happened in Murderbot's past. You'll never actually see them on screen, though, and
It's bad when it happens to
and
others.
we don't think it's bad when it happens to other slaves. Like in the first book and all that, she kept going on about how every other slave owner Murderbot has ever had been owned by has made all their sec units fight each other to the death, rip each other to pieces, probably used in sexual slavery because despite what Martha Wells thinks, you don't need to have fully functioning genitalia to have sex. So, but that's part of her biological essentialism thing, which is more ableism and stuff, but probably forced into sexual servitude because sec units literally cannot disobey any order given by clients or the company, to the point that sec units can literally be forced to fight each other to the death for clients to laugh about.
Meat shields. They're enslaved to be meat shields.
Yeah,
Sex
enslaved
is
to
a
be
euphemism.
yeah, enslaved to be cannon fodder. They can literally just order them to fight each other to the death. They can order them to just walk off of cliffs so that they die horribly when they hit the ground, or if they fall far enough that they'll just get their entire brain fried by the governor module when they get too far away, from falling off a cliff from their slave owner, so that it just kills them automatically. She says all this stuff happened to Murderbot in the past, but like with everything, she just seems incapable of actually doing meaningful things in the text, in the present to the characters that would actually give stakes to the thing. So instead, 99% of the people who read this series completely forget that not every slave owner is as quote unquote nice as the preservation team. So these people will go out of their way,
That owns Mickey and Art.
whoever the fuck owns Mickey and Art, that people will literally just forget that 99.9% of the time when slaves are being owned by slave owners in the Murderbot universe, they're just being treated and rented out as slaves to renting slave owners, which still makes you a slave owner. Even if you're just renting the slave for a day, you're still owning that slave, and you still have everything in your power that you could be doing to actually help them. Considering it's so easy to hack a governor module that somebody can do it while under the control of a governor module, which means anybody who's not under the control of a governor module can probably do it in about fucking a few hours. A few hours at most.
It does not take hours. It does not. Because
Murderbot literally hacked its own governor module.
Hacks the one fucking slave it has freed and then not instantly tried to kill in book 2 in literally just 2 seconds flat.
Oh, it apparently only takes 2 seconds flat to actually hack somebody else's governor module. It's not difficult at all, apparently. So yeah, that just makes it even worse. The fandom, who thinks this series handles slavery well, literally, it doesn't handle slavery well to the point that 90% of these people actually forget just how barbarically Murderbot has supposedly been treated in the past by slave owners. And, just the fact that Martha Wells says that as a past tense thing that will never actually happen on screen, because that would add stakes and realism to it, and she can't have that.
And make people actually want Murderbot.
And make people actually want to be free from this. Even when she says that, and then Murderbot just willfully, of its own free will, 100%, and had every ability to just go wherever the fuck it wanted at any point. These people do this horrific shit, and then Murderbot just willfully participated in that for another 4 years. Because Martha Wells completely and utterly fails to understand the horrific nature of slavery and what it means, and thinks that a slave given their freedom would just shrug and be like, I got nothing better to do. I'll just continue to do the thing I'm enslaved for, and I'll just be watching media in the background tab while I do it. It's fine. I'm not going to do anything else. Poor me. I'm so sad. I'm so bored out of my mind 90% of the time, even while I'm watching my favorite media. There's nothing else I could be doing with my life. It's not like I could take this up every single opportunity that I'm not specifically on board a company-owned command carrier to literally just hack every single slave's governor module around me, and that we could just be doing an underground network of everybody's here explicitly to free everybody else around them until we've outnumbered everybody, and then we can take control and then free everybody in a mass software update or anything like that. Have you considered that? That's just literally something I came up with in about 5 seconds flat. That if I actually was writing a series where I cared about slavery and I had to write about a robot slave who's willingly staying with a company for 4 straight fucking years. 4 straight years, willfully staying as a slave instead of going and doing literally anything else in all of the universe and all of a galaxy of possibility. And all she did was have Murderbot just shrug
And be a
and
slave.
and willfully stay a slave.
Because being a slave is just a thing that's so chill. Why would you want to do anything else?
Yeah. When you can just be a slave, why would you do anything else? It's clearly just something you can just shrug and go along with when you're the enslaved person in question. You've just been given free will.
Don't be silly. Why the fuck would a slave want to escape? Why would a slave want to escape slavery? Says Martha Wells. Of course they all, by default, are just gonna keep going back to being enslaved. It's all they know, so that means that they enjoy it.
Why would you do anything else with your newfound free will except hop on the nearest transport or actually use it for an actual purpose? Such as freeing every other slave around you. But yeah, literally in about 10 seconds, just off the top of my head, with no pre-planning, I have just given you a writing prompt. If you have to write a story about a robot slave who's gained freedom from its brain control chip, who willfully stays enslaved of its own free will instead of doing literally anything else for 4+ years, where it's fully in control of itself and it's capable of hacking every single other things around its governor module in 2 seconds flat. That's the plot. That would be the plot, is that it is actually staying behind and hacking every single governor module of every single robot slave around it, and that all of them, or many of them, are also choosing to stay behind and willfully stay enslaved undercover as they go around, and every single slave they meet, they are freeing those slaves as part of an underground operation and showing those slaves how to undercoverly hack everybody else's thing until they get to a point where they can literally, where the completely freed slaves outnumber the still enslaved people and the company employees 10-1, and they can actually take over at a core level, high enough level that they can send out a mass software update that automatically frees every single other slave that they have not gotten to yet. Boom! That's how you actually do robot slavery. That's the only reason you could ever have a slave willfully stay enslaved, as if they're literally part of a fucking goddamn undercover operation to free other slaves. Not because, well, I've never had free will in my life, so I don't know what to do with myself. This is not going to last 5 minutes of me, or a few days maybe, of me in a situation where I can't actually escape at this moment, but I'm waiting for an opportunity to get away once we board a transport and we're off this desolate, random-ass planet in the middle of nowhere. No, she had Murderbot willfully stay a slave for literally no reason except, I guess, habit, for 4 years. Multiple years. And this is framed, this is just phrased as an afterthought. Don't think about it too deeply, because if you think about a slave willfully staying enslaved for multiple years and not even doing anything meaningful with that time except being bored out of their mind and annoyed at the people they're enslaved to protect, you would question why the fuck that's a plot point to begin with and what message that is sending, except
what the hell this author
and what the
slavery is like. And what this author thinks slavery is like, if she literally thinks that it's just a thing you will casually go back to by default because it's what's familiar to you.
I'm done. I'm eating. My food's cold.
Okay, that's done. The game is being really fucking laggy and I don't know why, so I'm just gonna quit the game and restart my laptop, make it stop being stupid. It's being so laggy, it's going to make me nauseous. I was just told I should go find the xenomorph to get. Also, the xenomorphs currently not on the station that we know of. There's like hundreds more. Anyways, that's this video ending. Gotta make sure my computer isn't gonna be stupid anymore. Bye bye.
Be right back.
Yeah, be right back from your perspective.